Welcome to the ultimate medical guide for 7 days to die. In today's video, we'll be going over all of the injuries you can get in this game, how to prevent them, how to cure them, as well as all the medical items, what they do, and how to make them, as well as throwing in any medical related tips I can think of on the way. If you enjoy this video or learn something new, be sure to drop a like. It gives you a 20% resistance to being bad at this game. And if you're looking for something very specific, there should be timestamps along the bottom of the video for you. Let's get into this. So before we go over any specific injuries, I should probably explain how you get injured in this game. Basically, whenever zombies or animals hit you in this game, they can do a critical hit to the player. And a critical hit has a chance to inflict one of the critical injuries, like fatigue or a broken leg. Injuries like this are going to be the main topic of today's video. Now, critical resistance is a complicated mechanic in this game, and I'm going to save my full explanation for that mechanic and how it works for a dedicated armor video, because that's where it's more important. But the short of it is that this number here, you want to make this number as high as possible so that you'll take less critical injuries. The best way to do this is to wear better armor. Also, you're more likely to take critical hits the lower your health is. Now when you do take a critical hit, the game does a weighted roll to decide which of the critical hits you're going to take, some being more likely than others. Now if the game does decide that you're getting a critical hit and then decides which critical hit you're going to take, it's going to compare it against your critical resistance, and if you're unlucky, that critical is going to go through and apply to the player, and they'll receive an injury. Got that? Me neither. Let's do this. So the first injury you should probably know how to treat is bleeding. When a zombie gets a critical hit on you, it has a chance to cause bleeding, which means you'll get a 20-second timer during which you will lose 2 health per second, up to a maximum of 40 health lost. Bleeding can be stopped using a lot of different items though. First and most basic way to stop your bleeding is with a simple bandage. All the bandage does is stop the bleeding effect. That is the only thing it is used for aside from crafting a recipe later on in the game. Left clicking with a bandage equipped will use it on you, and right clicking with the bandage equipped will use it on the player you are looking at, which can be very helpful if you play with other people who are prone to panicking a little bit when they start bleeding, because the screen does slightly blur, and in the heat of battle it can be quite stressful. Bandages are extremely easy to obtain. You don't need any schematics for them, you just need 2 cloth and then you can craft one. An alternative though to bandages is sewing kits. The sewing kit is a crafting item that can be used to cure bleeding wounds, as well as another injury we'll be covering later, the laceration. The relative rarity of sewing kits, since they can't be crafted, means that you should only really use sewing kits to prevent bleeding in an emergency. You should really try and use bandages instead, because sewing kits are much harder to come by. You'll want to save your sewing kits for pocket mods, clothing, or healing the much more damaging effect, the laceration, which I mentioned earlier. I'll get more into those in a second, don't worry. Sewing kits can be used on yourself or other players in the same way that bandages can. Another option you have available to you is the first aid bandage. First aid bandages are made from cloth and aloe vera. First aid bandages will stop bleeding, heal abrasions, which is another injury I'll get to in a second, and will also restore a base of 30 health over the course of 15 seconds. They are a slightly more expensive option to craft because you'll have to unlock the schematic and you'll have to find aloe vera cream. All of the ingredients for the first aid bandage are very common and completely farmable. You can farm cotton and aloe vera on any farm you plan on doing, so you can get a lot of these very easily, which is a really good way of getting yourself a lot of healing items if you're having bad luck with loot. Again, these can be used on yourself and other players. The last option is kind of overkill for simple bleeds, but first aid kits are available for this as well. They're relatively expensive and they'll also heal your abrasions, lacerations and stop bleeding, whilst restoring a whopping 180 health. To craft a first aid kit, you'll need to unlock the schematic, and then you'll need a blood bag, beer, bandages and a sewing kit. Now these obviously give you way more healing than you would ever need to use, and it's probably overkill to use it on just bleeding, but if it's all you have, it's all you have. Now obviously these give you way more healing than you could ever use, but a good way to make the most of them is to use one before you go into the final room of a POI, where you think you're going to take a lot of damage. You won't have to use things like first aid bandages in the middle of the fight, because you should already have the maximum 2 health per second medical regen. But yeah, when it comes to stopping bleeding, if you can use a simple bandage, that's going to be the most efficient thing cost-wise. It just costs 2 cloth, and it's relatively easy to keep a large stock of them. You'll probably find yourself using first aid bandages for most of your bleeding, because you'll probably definitely want to carry those around at all times, because they're so good for healing, and they also heal abrasions, and they can stop bleeding, so you'll probably be using them most. But if you can use a simple bandage, use it. Now there are actually other ways for the player to receive the bleeding effect, but I'll get onto those in a second. First, we should cover a different kind of bleeding. Internal bleeding. It's like regular bleeding, but on the inside. Now, internal bleeding is a self-inflicted wound. It can only occur from you eating broken glass by your own choice. The internal bleeding effect will give you a minute of a lot of damage per second. I'm not actually sure how much it is, but the intention is it's supposed to kill your player. Now you can out-heal it in theory with a lot of medical items and a lot of special consumables, but for the most part, it's pointless. If you ate broken glass, you were probably doing it deliberately. So for the most part, there's no real way to treat this injury, you just have to kind of survive it or die. Dying does come with the advantage of fully restoring your health, food and water when you respawn though. Although if you're above level 6, this will come at the cost of something called near-death trauma, which will give you an XP debt that you have to work off before you're allowed to continue leveling. So if you are going to eat broken glass, do it near the beginning of a level so that you don't lose your XP bar. But let's move back to the main, real treatable injuries. The next one is Laceration. Now a laceration lasts 2 hours and reduces your maximum health by 25. When you get a laceration, you'll also get the bleeding effect. Lacerations also reduce your resistance to the bleeding effect. This means that if the game decides that your next critical is going to be the bleed effect from a zombie, it will take your critical resistance, which is your chance for that critical injury to bounce, and reduce that critical resistance by 15% whilst you have the laceration effect. So to cure a laceration is actually something we've already covered in the bleeding section. You can use the sewing kit or the first aid kit. Sewing kit is of course the cheaper option because the sewing kit is used in crafting first aid kits and other things. Now this is an important time to bring up the two kinds of injuries that you can get in this game. Some can be treated and will instantly disappear. Some become treated versions of the injury, which can become untreated if you get the critical hit again. Lacerations are not one of these injuries. If you cure your laceration, it's gone, you're good, you don't have to worry about the laceration anymore. However, this next injury is a little bit different. Arguably the most common and probably complicated injury in 7 Days to Die is the abrasion. First of all, every abrasion you get has a 40% chance to also trigger bleeding, so keep that in mind. The amount of health you lose from an abrasion is actually calculated by the duration of the abrasion. Every 5 minutes of the abrasion will reduce your maximum health by 2. So, if you have a 50-minute abrasion, you will lose 10 maximum health. However, you can actually receive multiple abrasions. If an abrasion is triggered, the time from that abrasion will be added to your current one, up to a maximum of 2 hours, at which point, at 2 hours, you'll have minus 25 health. But that max health loss will reduce as the injury heals naturally. On top of all of that though, there are basically 3 kinds of abrasions you can get. And I'm going to make up the names here because it's not that important. First, you have the basic zombie abrasion. This one lasts 30 minutes. You have the feral abrasion, which lasts 40 minutes, and what I'm going to call the special abrasion, which lasts 53 minutes. Now in the game files, it's not called a special abrasion, it's called something that would be very confusing right now, so just forget about it, it's called a special abrasion. And the way this works is that basic zombies will give you basic abrasions for 30 minutes, ferals and radiated zombies will do the feral abrasions, which last 40 minutes, and cop spit and vultures will give you the special abrasions, which last 53 minutes. Treated abrasion will not give you any more max health, despite it having a much shorter timer. The health will continue to regen at the normal pace it would have if you hadn't treated it, however, the injury will simply go away in the treated abrasion timer, which will be much faster than the untreated abrasion. But how do you treat the abrasion? Well, first up you have basic aloe vera. Aloe vera cream is an item you can craft from aloe vera leaves, which you get from the aloe vera plant, which grows in the desert naturally. The aloe vera will double the healing speed of your abrasion, so if you have a 2-hour one, it will go down to a 1-hour abrasion. First aid bandages, which are made from cloth and aloe vera cream, will heal it 3 times as fast, and first aid kits can heal it 4 times as fast. Did you get all that? That's probably the most complicated injury in the game aside from maybe broken arms and legs, which we'll be getting into later, but it's definitely the one you're going to see the most out of all the other injuries in the game. And ironically enough, it's the one most people don't give much thought, they just kind of slap on some aloe vera cream and forget about it, but it is actually one of the more complicated injuries in the game. But hey, this is the ultimate medical guide. It's full of intricate details you didn't ask for, because that is what I am all about. Intricate detail you didn't ask for. The next injury is infection. This is another complicated one that can be gotten from regular critical hits. If you get infected and then don't take any further hits but also don't treat the injury, you will die in exactly 7 hours, or 7 in-game days. Like the title, do you see what they did there? But if you do take some more hits, zombies will increase your infection percentage up even faster. If your infection percentage reaches 100%, you die. But it's not quite that simple. At stage 1, which is from 0 to 15% infected, there are absolutely no symptoms. This will last for 1 hour or 1 in-game day. At stage 2, you will suffer a 25% reduction in your stamina regen speed, and this stage will last about 3 hours or up to 57%. At stage 3, you'll suffer minus 35% stamina regen and a massive -1 to all of your attributes. This will last another 3 hours up until 100%, and at 100% you hit stage 4 and you die. And no, when you go back to your bag after respawning, you won't find a zombie version of yourself. Yes, I know that sucks and it's terrible. But what can you do about the infection? Well, you can prevent infection entirely with the vitamins item. Now, I'm going to talk more about vitamins later on in another section where they're much more important. Basically, if you eat vitamins, you cannot get the infection effect for the duration of the item. But there's some other ways you can avoid infection as well, aside from just not getting hit, of course. A character with 1 point in Brawler will be able to prevent zombies from infecting anyone by punching them in the face. A zombie hit with a headshot with a fist weapon from someone with rank 1 Brawler cannot infect anyone through melee attacks, with the logic essentially being that if they don't have teeth they can't bite you, so you can't get infected, even though none of the zombies bite you anyway, they all punch you. But if you do get infected, there are some things you can do. There are a few items which can reduce the infection percentage, and of course if the infection percentage reaches 0, you're cured. First is honey. Honey can treat your infection and reduce it by 5% over time. Honey is most commonly found in tree stumps and is the easiest way you can stop an infection very early on. It's a good idea to stockpile a lot of honey in your base so that if you ever get infected, come back before you hit 5% and just eat some honey and you'll be fine. Another option is herbal antibiotics, which can be crafted with blueberries, mushrooms, chrysanthemum, and nitrate powder. But you'll have to unlock the schematic to be able to craft them. Making them a campfire costs more materials and takes longer, whereas making them a chemistry station will cost less materials and will be much faster. These will reduce your infection percentage by 10%. And finally, there are regular antibiotics, which are craftable with old sham sandwiches and nitrate powder once you unlock the schematics, and will cure 25% of your infection over time. If you do any of these three, the effects of the stage of infection you're currently on will be reduced, massively reducing the stamina debuffs you get from the infection. It's worth noting that getting hit by zombies will increase your infection percentage, and just like Abrasions, it is dependent on what kind of thing you get hit by to determine how much percentage boost you get from each hit. Top Spit and Vultures will give you more infection than Ferals and Radiated Zombies, and Ferals and Radiated Zombies will give you more infection than regular zombies. Also, a really nice little detail in this game is that Hazmat Zombies actually give you a lot more infection percentage per hit, up to 5 times more than Vultures, and Feral Hazmat Zombies will give you 50% more than regular Hazmat Zombies. So if you're infected, getting hit by Hazmat Zombies makes it a lot worse, which I think is a really cool detail because presumably there is infected stuff on the outside of their biohazard suit, which I just think is a really cool little detail. The next injury we have is Fatigue. Fatigue is another effect that can be triggered by a zombie getting a critical hit on you. Fatigue will reduce your maximum health by 20 and make you take 10% more damage from all sources. The effect will last 2 hours, but you can instantly cure it with vitamins. Vitamins are a non-craftable pill that will give you a 100% resistance to diseases and cure your fatigue. Protection from vitamins lasts 12 minutes and can be extended to 18 minutes with rank 5 of the Iron Gut perk in Fortitude. You can stack up to 3 of these at a time, allowing you to have a maximum of 36 minutes of protection or 54 minutes with the Iron Gut maxed out. The disease resistance from vitamins will prevent infection and dysentery from all sources. These are great if you're low on food or water and you need to eat rotten food or unclean water, or to take on Horde Night or in big POIs to prevent infection from stray hits before they happen. Make sure to keep some in reserve to cure fatigue, because the 10% boost to the damage you take is very brutal, especially on higher difficulties. Speaking of vitamins and dysentery, dysentery comes from drinking or eating unclean food or water. When you have dysentery, you will get a very funny little icon in the bottom left, the percentage, and while that percentage goes down, you'll use a lot more food and water than you would have otherwise, and that can be a real problem if you're already low on food, which if you've stooped to the point of drinking murky water and eating rotten food, you're probably already quite low on food, so this could be the thing that finishes you off if you're not careful. Now if you do get dysentery, it will go away over time, assuming it doesn't make you starve or dehydrate to death. But if you need to get rid of it faster, you can use goldenrod tea, which will reduce dysentery by 20% much faster than it would have gone away on its own. So use some of that to get it out of your system quickly. Insert Oregon Trail reference here. Haha, that segue was so blunt it gave me a concussion. I said it gave me a concussion. Next up, we have the Concussion. Concussions reduce your health by 25 initially, and they will last 2 hours. And it also subtracts 1 from all of your attributes, which will temporarily make perk levels reliant on that attribute unavailable, even if you've already purchased them. Now, concussions are a little bit different from other injuries. These are not a direct critical hit that you can take. Instead, they have a 50% chance to occur whenever the player receives a stun. Stun has a chance to happen when a zombie gets a critical hit on you, and it will reduce your speed, attack speed, and jump height for a few seconds, but it also gives you that 50% chance of getting a concussion. Concussions will also induce periodic blurs to your screen, which will have essentially the same effect as stuns, but they won't extend the time of your concussion. Now, because concussions are caused by stuns, anything that blocks stuns will also stop concussions. This means that painkillers, beer, Grandpa's moonshine, and the pain tolerance perk can all be used to prevent stuns and as such completely negate the possibility of a concussion. The pain tolerance perk is a fortitude perk which will reduce the amount of damage you take by 25%, and on the final rank will completely and utterly make you immune to stuns, and as a result make you completely and utterly immune to concussions, which is a really nice bonus effect that not a lot of people know about. But if you do get a concussion, how can you cure it? Well, the only way to cure it instantly is painkillers. Painkillers are a medical item that can be used to restore a base of 40 health instantly. That's right, it will restore 40 health to your health bar instantly the second you use the medical item, which is extremely powerful. They also cure concussions, prevent stuns and concussions, and provide a 10% bonus to your damage resistance. Painkillers are extremely good. Do not waste them. Now it's worth noting that painkillers are not boosted by the physician perk, they will always give you just 40 health. They cannot be crafted, and that's because they're so powerful. I usually like to keep a stack of painkillers on my number 2 slot on my hotbar so that I can switch to my main weapon to painkillers if I get myself in a very dangerous situation and need some very rapid health regen. The ability to restore such a large amount of health completely instantly is extremely powerful, and you should not waste these. Downsides of painkillers though are that if you take painkillers, you won't be able to use painkillers again for a minimum of 3 minutes because of the other effects. Painkillers do not stack, so you have to wait for the first 3 minutes to end before you can use them again. And of course, this is going to be amplified by anything that makes the duration of consumables longer, like the Iron Gut perk in Fortitude. So for example, with level 5 Iron Gut, you won't be able to take a painkiller again for another 4.5 minutes, so you'll have to wait longer between your uses of painkillers to get that instant health restore, which is probably the best effect from it. Oh, and it's worth noting that over the course of the painkiller buff, depending on how long it lasts, you will lose 40 hydration over time, so keep some water around if you're using painkillers. Another injury inflicted by critical hits is the Sprained Arm. The Sprained Arm will reduce your health by 30 points for 10 minutes, and it will also slow down your reloading by 20%, your melee weapon swing speeds by 15%, and your crosshair reset time by 15%. It also makes it so that firing a gun or power attacking with a melee weapon will add time to your healing time and will also damage you, which can kill you if you're not paying attention. A similar injury to the sprained arm is the sprained leg. This can come from either a critical hit or of course fall damage. The sprained leg will also reduce your health by 30 for 10 minutes, as well as reduce your movement speed by 15%, and it will worsen and damage you if you try to jump or sprint. Both sprained legs and sprained arms can become broken legs or arms respectively if you take further critical hits while sprained, or in the case of broken legs, if you take even more fall damage. Sprained limbs don't actually have a specific medicine that speeds up their healing, but there are a few ways that you can speed up that healing that we may as well go over now. First up, we have the health bar. The health bar is a relatively rare candy that can be bought from vending machines. It is one of the very few ways in the game to increase your maximum health, giving you plus 10 for its duration. It also gives you a bonus of crit resist. Again, crit resist is a topic I'll cover in another video because it's complicated. But remember, more crit resist is just good because you get less critical injuries. It also boosts your natural crit healing speed to 200%. This will allow you to heal all critical injuries twice as fast, including sprains, reducing their heal time from 10 minutes to 5 minutes. Now the default duration of a health bar is 5 minutes, this can be extended to 7.5 minutes with Iron Gut. And of course you can get a very similar effect from the healing factor perk in the Fortitude tree. At rank 5 you'll get a bunch of extra natural healing, which will cost you food by the way. This is not free healing, it just increases the speed at which you turn food into health. But you'll also get a 100% boost to your critical healing speed, just like the health bar, but permanently. And this does stack with health bars as well as all the other medicines in the game which treat injuries. It will stack with them. So for example, with Abrasions, if you use a first aid kit, a health bar and healing factor, you will heal it 1600% faster, which is pretty good. But in the case of sprained arms and legs, using a health bar and the healing factor perk together will take them from 10 minutes down to 2.5 minutes. Which is decent. You just have to remember not to worsen the effect and extend the timer or reduce your own health. Or do you? There's actually a hidden effect of the steroid item in 7 Days to Die, which will stop broken and sprained limbs from getting any worse for the duration of the steroid. And it will also stop actions you do with them from hurting you. So, along with maxing out your inventory and letting you run 10% faster, steroids will mute the worsening effects of broken and sprained limbs. For example, with steroids, you'll be able to run and jump with a sprained or broken leg without taking more damage or extending that timer. This is the same with broken arms and sprained arms with firing guns and power attacks. Steroids can be crafted with oil, beer and testosterone in the chemistry station, but do keep in mind they will use 30 water over the course of their duration, so keep some water around when using those as well. But what if your sprain progresses to a break? Well, broken legs and arms last 2 hours instead of 10 minutes, and they are much more severe than the sprained versions, although they only reduce your health by 25 instead of 30. Broken arm will reduce your reload speed by 35%, your swing speed by 25%, and will increase your crosshair reset time by 25%. And a broken leg will reduce your movement speed by 50%. Fortunately though, broken limbs have specific medicines that you can use to reduce heal times and to dampen the effects of the injury. Using a splint will reduce your 2-hour timer down to 40 minutes, and it will also take that 50% mobility penalty of broken legs down to a much more bearable 15%. And it will bring broken arms down to 15% crosshair reset speed and swing speed with minus 20% reload speed. Clearly, a splint is a very cheap and easy way to make broken limbs much more bearable, and they cost 2 cloth, 2 wood and 1 duct tape and don't require any kind of schematic. But later on in the game you do have the option of using a cast. A cast will take your timer from 2 hours down to 25 minutes and it will make your broken leg debuff just 10%. Strangely though, the cast has no advantage penalty wise to the splint when it comes to broken arms, it just heals faster. So casts are more important when you have a broken leg. Casts are made at the chemistry station with 2 cloth, 4 cornmeal and 2 crushed sand. They're a more endgame feature compared to the simple splint. If you can get them, they will heal your broken limbs much easier. And also remember that steroids will work with broken limbs as well to prevent you from causing more damage to yourself and extending the timer. Keep these things around even in the endgame once your inventory is fully opened up. The last thing I need to cover is simply the Physician perk. The Physician perk is in the intellect tree, and it will increase the amount of health restoration you get from medical items by up to 75%. But this does not include painkillers. I'll have a graph on the screen right now which will show you how much more healing you get from the 4 ranks of Physician compared to the base items, so that you can know if it's worth it for you. And that is everything you should need to know about medicine and injuries in 7 Days to Die. Did I miss something? Let me know down in the comments. If this video really helped you out, I'd appreciate a like and a subscribe, and why not join my Discord, linked in the description. Thank you to my channel members and patrons for making this video possible, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.